All right, let's dive into the latest earnings call from KPIT Technologies. Now, if you're not familiar, they're a huge software player in the auto world, and on the surface, their quarter looks pretty solid. But you dig just a little bit deeper and you find this really fascinating puzzle, and it's one that might just change how you think about growth in the tech industry. And that puzzle, well, it's right here. How can a company be signing more deals than ever, but at the same time, its growth is slowing down? It just doesn't add up, right? Well, stick with us because the answer reveals this really bold strategic gamble. And it's not just about KPIT. This could be about the future of the entire auto tech industry. Okay, so to get to the bottom of this, we've got to start with the numbers from their latest quarter. And you'll see right away, it's a story of total contrasts. You've got these big wins on one side, and then some, pretty serious warning lights flashing on the other. And this really gets to the heart of it. Check this out. KPI Tech locked in a massive $241 million in new deals. I mean, that's huge. It proves clients are absolutely still buying what they're selling. But then you look at the other side. Actual year-on-year revenue growth was just a modest 7.8% in dollar terms. So all this new business isn't translating into a bigger bottom line, at least not yet. So what's going on here? But here's where the picture starts to make a little more sense. So yeah, that dollar revenue growth, it looks kind of slow. But look at their profitability. Their operating profit, their EBITDA, grew over 12%. And that's on a really healthy 21% margin. So what does that tell you? They aren't just surviving, they are managing their costs with surgical precision. This is not a company in crisis. This is a company making a very, very deliberate choice. So the big question is, what's forcing them to make this choice? Well, KPIT doesn't operate in a bubble, right? The entire automotive industry is basically driving straight into a massive storm, some serious headwinds, and believe me, the big car makers are getting nervous. Let's break down exactly what they're up against. I mean, look at this. The pressure is coming from all sides. You've got geopolitical uncertainty. You've got tariffs driving up costs. Competition is just brutal. So what do the big car makers, the OEMs, do when this happens? They hit the brakes on those big, ambitious, long-term projects, those moonshots. Instead, they're funneling all their cash into what absolutely has to get done right now. And of course, that caution flows right downhill to partners like KPIT. Okay, and this is where the story gets really interesting. Because faced with all these headwinds, KPIT isn't just, hunkering down and waiting for the storm to pass. Nope. They are making a fundamental pivot in their entire business model. And it's one that's designed not just to survive this thing, but to actually come out of it stronger on the other side. So, the first big clue to their new strategy? It's this number right here. Over 62% of their business now comes from fixed-price projects. Now, you might be thinking, why is that such a big deal? Well, it's a huge deal because it completely flips the old model on its head. See, instead of just billing for more and more hours, they're now incentivized to get the job done as efficiently as humanly possible. If they can use AI to finish a project faster, guess what? That extra margin is theirs to keep. And that incentive leads them to this really bold and honestly kind of counterintuitive strategy they call AI-driven cannibalization. Just think about that for a second. They're actively choosing to eat their own lunch. They're basically going to clients and saying, hey, you know that old expensive project we're doing for you? Well, we have a new AI tool that can do it way faster and cheaper. Now, sure, that means less revenue on that specific task today, but what it does is prove that they're a partner focused on real value, not just racking up billable hours. So let me give you a real-world example of how this actually plays out. Imagine a car maker is way behind schedule on validating software for a new car. And of course, they have zero extra budget. KPIT comes in and says, look, forget the old way of doing this. We have an AI solution that can get this done for you much, much faster. So the project gets back on track. The client is obviously thrilled. Now think about it. The next time that client has another urgent problem, who do you think they're going to call? That is the long-term win they're playing for. But look, this whole defensive pivot, that's really only half the story. Because at the exact same time, KPIT is going on offense. They are aggressively planting flags in new, high-growth markets, looking for that next big wave of opportunity. And probably the biggest headline here is a brand new partnership with JSW Motors back in India. Now, if you don't know JSW, they're an industrial giant, and they're making a huge jump into electric vehicles. And who do they tap to be a key software partner? KPIT. This is a massive deal, giving them a major foothold in one of the fastest-growing EV markets on the planet. And you got to understand, this is all part of a much bigger play across Asia. In both India and China, they're not just going after the big established car makers. They're also working with the new EV upstarts, the challengers, and the local tier ones. The big suppliers that build all the critical systems for the auto giants. And their goal? It's pretty ambitious. They want to turn India and China into a combined three-digit revenue stream. That's over $100 million in just 2 years. So, what does all this mean for the future? Where are they headed? Well, let's take a look at the road ahead based on what the company itself is saying. I think their CEO, Kishore Patil, really summed up their entire strategy perfectly with this one line. He said, "We'll start walking before running." And that's it, right there. It's just pure pragmatism. They know the market is tough right now, so they're totally focused on building a rock-solid foundation before they even think about stomping on the accelerator. And this is what that walk before you run strategy actually looks like on a timeline. Phase 1, the first half of this year, is all about getting stable. Phase 2, the second half of the year, is about starting to build that growth momentum back up. And then Phase 3, that's the real payoff. In 2 to 3 years, they expect all those big bets on AI, on new markets, on new products to finally kick in and drive that next huge wave of growth. When you boil it all down, what we're really witnessing here is a fundamental shift in the entire playbook. Think about it. The old IT services model was super simple. You hire more people, you make more revenue. Headcount was directly tied to growth. But this new model KPIT is building, it completely decouples growth from headcount. It's all about using AI and smart platforms to deliver better solutions, which in turn creates a more valuable and a much, much more resilient business. And that brings us to the big final question, doesn't it? What we're seeing here with KPIT, it's not just about one company's quarterly results. It's like a microcosm of a massive shift happening everywhere. In an auto industry that's being squeezed by intense cost pressure and insane technological change, is this the new blueprint for success? Is proactively swapping human hours for AI-driven efficiency, is that no longer a choice but an absolute necessity for survival? That's the big idea I want to leave you with from this explainer.